And Beto is... Don't turn around with this mic. Beto is my sponsor, and I love him. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Beto. Thank you.
My name is Beto. I'm an addict. Can you hear me back there all right? Because I can't hardly hear myself, so I can imagine how you feel. Okay. I was thinking about this afternoon, and I wanted to...
Hold up your mouth.
Here? Yeah. Is that better? Yeah. I was thinking about at the World's Convention in 1990 in Portland, I spoke about self-forgiveness. Because when I first came here, I came here full of guilt, full of shame, and everything else that you want to attach to it. So I thought maybe what I would try to do is to tell you how I used the steps that allowed me to reach 15 years of being clean. It hasn't been easy, but yet it's been easy. And the parts that have not been easy, man, is that I still struggle with my ego. I still struggle with my hypocrisy. And I still struggle, man, with trying to be a look good. You know. See, I was raised from a very early age in juvenile hall. And when I was 9 years old, I was in juvenile hall. When I was 12 years old, I lived down the streets and I used to work in a whorehouse. I used to be a shoeshine boy there. So as I was growing up, man, I never had what you call an adult, a childhood. You know, all I knew was use, get sick, go hustle, use, go do time, come back, and it was one continuous circle. And during that circle, I developed this attitude that if you had something, I was going to take it. Whatever you had, if I needed it, I was going to take it. Most of the time, I take it with a gun, you know. But the thing is that during this time, I married my childhood sweetheart. I knew her from the time that she was 12 o'clock. I'm nervous because this is kind of hard for me to talk about this that I want to talk about. Because, see, I have a lot of women friends in this program that have showed me unconditional love. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, man, that it's not bogus, that they really care, because I have learned how to respect them. You know? But every time, these last 6 years, 8 years, I never really wanted to get into the depths of it and talk about it, man. It's about... I used to beat my wife whenever I felt like it. I used to get my children, man, and throw them up against the wall. I remember one of my younger boys, man, when he was real little, man, I put him in front of the TV set. And I wanted to see, like, throwing knives, you know. I was shooting at him, man, around the clock, you know. My wife was hysterical, man, hollering and all this other shit. And I told her, if you don't shut up, I'm going to shoot you too. But see, the reason that I did all of this, I found out, was this. And I want to share with you this part here, man, is how being addicts, we have a tendency to do this. I got sentenced to 10 to 20 years in the penitentiary, and then I got sentenced on top of that to a federal charge. So my wife came to visit me, and I told her, well, you know what, man, I don't know, 10 to 20 years means I'll have to do 20, and then after I finish that 20 years, I'll have to do 10 more, so you know what, you better go ahead and get a divorce. So when I was almost, after about 8 years, I get a letter from her, and she tells me, I met this guy, and I had a little boy, and this guy doesn't want to get a divorce, and he doesn't want to claim the child. He says, so would you mind if I gave him our last name? Because even though we were divorced, she still kept the child. I said, yeah, sure. That's what you want to do. Another year passes by, man, she has another kid. And she finds out, man, that not only that, but, there was no way in the world that he was going to cut his old lady loose or anything. And he was just using her as convenience. So I got out, and I'm walking down the street, and I got these 2 older boys, and I got these 2 little boys, and we're walking down the street, and I run into these friends of mine. And, where I come from is, hey, man, how you doing, man? Blah, 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 and all this other stuff, And they says, when'd you get out? I said, oh, I just got out a week ago, and this and that, And then one of them says, well, whose kids are these? I said, well, these are my boys. He said, well, didn't you just finish doing 10 years? And I said, yeah. And then he caught himself. And he like, the words slipped out of his mouth, right? He said, well, I'll see you later, And so they started walking away. And I heard one of them say, man, I sure messed up, huh? And inside I told myself, yeah. She embarrassed me in front of my homeboys. She embarrassed me, It's not that I had embarrassed her, she embarrassed me. And as I'm walking away, man, I start calling her a bitch. I made a commitment to myself that what I was going to do, I was going to drive her insane. So what I started doing, man, I started giving her tranquilizers. Then I started giving her pennies. Then I started giving her speed. Then I started giving her heroin. Everything, man, just so I could get this hate. But at that time, I didn't know it was a hate against self. It was, everything was her fault, right? So, I started going through this here, and I told myself, you know what, Beto, you better go talk to your sponsor, Now remember, I'm clean 8 years now. This happened when I got out, a week after I got out. But for 8 years, man, I lived with this. And I finally got to, after 8 years, man, this poison was eating me up. And I went and I started talking to my sponsor about it, man. And he told me that what I had to do, man, is I had to make amends because, you see, we got loaded and got in the car. The next thing I knew, man, 32 days later, I came out of this amnesia. What had happened was we had an accident. She died instantly. I ended up in the hospital with 32 days of amnesia, and during that time I had the amnesia. They gave me 9 shock treatments. They released me from the hospital from March the 8th until September, I forget what September. I was walking around the streets, man, wearing a wool top coat with a bottle of some kind of alcohol in one pocket. In the other pocket, man, I had a hypodermic syringe, and I had all kind of them psychedelic pills, and I was shooting reds, I was shooting this, I was shooting anything that I could get in my vein. Okay? Because what was happening was I was becoming more and more aware of what I had done. And the more I became aware of what I had done, the more this guilt was eating me up. So I decided that, you know what, man, I had to really get involved in these steps. I had to start looking at me. Not people, not places, not things. I had to start looking at my part. What did I do? Not what she did. And, I went through a hell of a time there, man, for a while, because I thought I was going insane. So, from that on, it started making me change. Because when I came here, I didn't believe in God. But I started all of a sudden, man, you see, in Mexican, man, we say, there's let me see, you translate it into English, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, amen, right? But we say it in Spanish. And I found myself, I hadn't said that prayer since I was about 12 years old. And I found myself saying this every night before I started to go to sleep. I was saying that at night, and I asked myself, how come you're using this? How come you're saying your prayers? Because see, trying to be a look good, you guys know what being a look good is? And have you ever been in a penitentiary? And nobody wants to go, everybody feels some kind of religious thing, but they don't want nobody to know. So what you ask, they say, well, let's go to church. Oh, no, man, I got to go over here, you know what I mean? But then I would do something purposely, so they would put me in the hole. So when I was in that dark cell, nobody was around to watch me pray. And I told myself, man, you're a big old phony, man. Now remember, when I cleaned up in '81, I was 52 years old. 8 years later, I'm 59 years old, and I'm trying to find a solution to happiness, to serenity, to that which I felt, man, that I was entitled to, just like anybody else in this world, because in reality, I wasn't a bad guy. But I couldn't understand why these things were happening. But the more I started getting into them steps and the more I started getting into traditions, I started realizing that if I wanted to find that which I was seeking, I had to drop my hand. And what my sponsor used to tell me that, and what it means by is this, man. That I had to be willing to get up in the front of a group of people and tell you exactly what was happening with me without trying to make it sound good. To let you see me naked. To let you see me struggle, man, trying to be honest with you. Especially as I mentioned earlier with the lady. You know. Because, you know, when I used to say this, like, for instance, this lady, I know for quite a few years and all this stuff, man. And the minute I start mentioning about this child abuse and wife abuse and everything else, I would see this look come over their face, like of hate. You know, like, man, I didn't know about that about him. You know. But you know what? I couldn't stop myself from saying it. I knew that I had to tell you that. Because that was the way that I was going to find what I was looking for. Now, remember this time that I told you, man, that I was in the hospital with this amnesia and stuff? My son, they sent him back from Vietnam by error. They sent him back. He was in a firefight, and they sent him back, and they told him, excuse me a minute. They found out, man, they told my son, you know what, your mother and father are dead.
Mike's not working.
Oh, no? I didn't want you to hear it. My mother, they told my son, your mother and father are dead, and we're sending you back to the state. And they put him on one of them passenger Delta airplane. They sent him back over here. He couldn't see his mom because he had a closed casket. He couldn't see me, man, because I was out to lunch. You know, I was out in the loony bin somewhere, man. And he tells me, he says, you know what, Dad? He says, I went back to Vietnam and I went so crazy. So consequently, what they had to do, they sent him to Alaska to an army hospital, and he had to go through therapy for a year, man, because of all that had happened to him. You know? But the beautiful part about this whole thing is that I'd like to share about when this oldest boy at one time told me, why don't you do us a favor and go off and die somewhere? And the other son says, you know what? Words ain't sufficient to erase all the pain that you caused this family. Why don't you just get your shit and split? Now I'm talking to boys 6-footers. You know, big Indians, you know what I mean? They ain't no little old shrimps no more, man, you know. So what am I going to do, man? I'm like, you know, strung out, a weenie and everything else. And I know they would beat the shit out of me. You know. So I says, okay. Well, today, as a direct result of Narcotics Anonymous, I know I've made amends to all my children. I've made amends to my sister, my aunt, all of my relatives, man. And I have not tried to convince them. Now, if you have any of these problems that I'm relating to you, man, listen to this. You cannot convince anybody that you're staying clean. All you gotta do, man, is continue day by day doing what you're doing. Practicing the steps, sharing, suiting up and showing up. being of service, all the things that our literature tells us. You got to start doing all of this stuff. And here's the beautiful part about it. I just came back, what time we got here?
Yeah,
Plenty of time. Got plenty of time.
Last week I went to Anchorage. I had 4 generations of my family there. I had my sons, my daughter, my other daughter couldn't come, right? I had their children. I had my grandchildren's children. So I had 4 generations of my blood. Right? And my oldest boy told me, Dad, I want to talk to you in the bedroom private for a minute. And I said, okay. And I'm scared to death, man. I was, man. I was real scared. I didn't know what was going to come, you know. And we were sitting there in the bedroom, and he tells me, you know what, Dad? He said, I guess it's everybody else, but I guess I notice it more in our family that we're very stoic, you know, and that, you know, by stoic, if you don't know what I'm saying, man, is that we don't show no emotions, you know, keep everything to ourselves. And he says, for a long time, I've wanted to share some things with you. And I've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. But you know what? Would you listen to me? And I said, yeah. And he starts telling me how, when he was a little boy, how they used to shame him. How they used to tell him that your father is the son of the devil. You know, your mother's no good. And you know all that stuff that I'm talking about. And I let him run it, man. And while he's running it, man, tears are coming out of my eyes. Tears are coming out of his eyes. And we're holding each other, and we're both crying. And my son says, you know what, Dad? He says, this cleansing has sure taken a long time, huh? And I says, yeah. And I says, you know what? Thank you. He says, you know what, Dad? He says, I'm going to miss you. I want you to know, man, that I love you. And I'm sorry that I didn't have the courage, man, to bring these things up sooner so that we could have more time together. And you know what I did right then and there? While he was talking, I was repeating the serenity prayer to myself. I kept repeating it over and over. Right? I gotta fake this cough while he turns the tape. You know, I'm sitting there saying the serenity prayer, man, and I'm thanking God, you know, and I'm telling him, man, thank you, man. You know? I said, this is what I've wanted all my life. You know, to be able, man, to have my children telling me that they forgive me. And to be very honest with you, man, the rest of that day, him and my other son, man, all they spent all day doing was this. You know, touching me, holding me. You know. This is an old habit from the penitentiary. That's the way I get rid of my emotion. But you know, it's recovery, man, is so beautiful. that a lot of times I try to make myself understand, man, is why do I refuse it and give it back to God so many times? Because the child that's inside of me, man, doesn't like to look bad. I want to be Mr. Macho that could walk the yard in any penitentiary, could be on any yard. My name was good. And I thought, man, you know what? All that status was important. But you know what? Being a look good and being an addict and being a phony and a hypocrite, man, ain't worth shit. It ain't worth it, man. Because when you finally get to the end and you take a look at it, man, you realize, man, you know what? What a fool. So, you know, now my one daughter, see, I'm trying to run away from all of this stuff, man, so I do this, man. My oldest daughter, man, she is handicapped 8 years. And for a long time, man, I loved her, but I didn't like her. Because she gets loaded, too. My other daughter's got 10 years clean. And I keep saying, well, why not her? But I was embarrassed. And I know that this is how you, what would you call it, man? My ego. That any child born of me or thereof, man, is not supposed to be handicapped. I guess I'm making sense. I don't know. Because I ignored her. She's had 6 kids from 3 different dudes and never been married. First guy, the grandson that I took away from her, I raised him from 9 years old, and I had him graduate from high school up there in Alaska. The other girl, Gina, she had her first child at 15, the next one at 16, the next one at 17, and she loves that PCP. That's what my daughter loves, is that PCP too. But the fourth one, she's got 4 kids from this guy on the res, on the reservation. And she's innocent, man. She don't know whether she's coming or going. And somebody do me a favor and get me back on track, man. What was I talking before that?
Handicapped daughter.
Oh, yeah. I was embarrassed, man, that she was handicapped. I felt shame. I felt shame, man, that she was handicapped, that she was retarded. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just couldn't live with it, man. But she was there also. And we sat down and talked. And then all the males in the family, we all got together, and we're making plans now to bring my daughter's family up to Alaska, and see if we can help her to get the whole family united. And I never would have been able to do that without this program. And like right now, like I mentioned before, man, I don't know where this cancer came from. But I had to accept the fact that it's a reality. They told me 3 months ago that I got about 3 months left, but that there's a possibility that I might go further, because I already passed one 6-month deadline. But yeah. See, I made a deal with God, man.
All right, Home.
I told him, you know what, man? I'm going to the World Convention in St. Louis.
Give it up, Home.
And my doctor says, you what? I says, I'm going to the World Convention. I'll take my little speedy-o wheelchair, right? And I'll go sit in the lobby, man, and I'll sit there and bullshit with all my friends, because I know people from all over the world, you know, and I'll be happy. He said, you know what, man? He said, do whatever you want to do. He says, because it doesn't make no difference what I tell you. You do it anyway. Because, see, I learned here, man. Pepe, George, John knows George, Don, you know, they told me, you know what, man? Look at all of this as an adventure, not a challenge. Because if you look at it as a challenge and things don't go right, you're going to feel that you failed at something. But if you look at it as an adventure, you can say, man, I sure learned a lot of things this time. And you don't feel that guilt.
Right on.
So you know what? I hope you found what I have been looking for. I hope you bear with me, man, that I don't want to go any further. You know, I don't want to talk no more about it. Not to neglect you or anything else like that, man. But you know, putting all this together, what's happening this last month, man. I don't think I could handle it right now. You know. Because I have to be honest, man. I just can't. And I'm not going to try to be a people pleaser. I just want to say thank you. Okay.
Now, may we close with a circle of unity, representing that we can stay clean together in Narcotics Anonymous, and we can't stay clean alone. And can we have one more round of applause for Beto?
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
Pleasant dreams. Good night and pleasant dreams. Well, anybody, we got a little bit more time there? Is there anybody that would like to share anything right now? Because I know I opened up a bag of worms for a lot of people. You know? And if you'd like to say something, a couple of minutes or whatever it is, or someone like to share. No one?
I'll share.
Okay. Put it on tape so we can keep. Can you hear me? No? Yeah. Okay. Is it on there? Huh?
Yeah, my name's Donovan. I'm an addict.
Hey, Donovan.
And I just wanted to share that I'm new in recovery. Me and my wife, but it was like a few years ago. I was so afraid of dying that I decided to give Narcotics Anonymous a try to stay clean. And by doing that, it's changed my life. And it was like when I first started going to that meeting down at the Rendezvous Restaurant in Belltown, I heard Beto's tape down there, and I reached out to people, and I relate very much with this man, though I've never been to jail or penitentiary. I relate with the hatred and the anger, and I've been carrying around that all my life, and it's been destroying me. And it was like, it's like this is part 2 tonight of your tape for me. It's like you've opened up more to me about, to be a real man, it's not all about, looking good and being macho or what other people are going to think of me, It's like I got to be true to myself, and my idea of a man today is not what it was 4 years ago. And it was like you guys in these rooms have taught me that. And I wanted to thank you again. And thanks, Beto. I love you, man.
Suzanne?
Give it to her.
I'm the regional service representative right now for our region, and one of the issues that's come up on the floor. Oh, I've got to introduce myself on tape. I'm Suzanne, and I'm still an addict.
Hi, Suzanne.
And one of the issues that came up last year was how do we retain older members in Narcotics Anonymous to continue to do service work, to share their experience, strength, and hope. And Beto does not fall under that. He has not needed to be helped in doing that. He's been like a 4 leader out there. Anytime I go anywhere in NA, whether it's Mexico, world, anything, this man is there, and he's been given his heart and his soul to recovering addicts. And I really respect you, Beto, for that. And I love you dearly. There's always been something about you that I have always felt so close to you, even though I never even knew you. And it's your heart, and that you want us to stay clean, and you're there for us everywhere in the whole world of Narcotics Anonymous. And I thank you for that, and for coming back and going out there and reaching all of us. Thank you. Thank you.
I knew he had to do this. You ready, Earl? Are you ready?
Blank the tape out.
My name is Jimmy. I'm a recovering addict.
Hi, Jimmy.
Beto told me, man, if you speak, don't get too heavy. And I told him, okay. But when I found out, when Beto told me that he had cancer, we thought he had gallstones at first. And he told me he had cancer, and I had a real hard time accepting that. And one day, him and I went to breakfast, and he says, Jimmy, remember how we used to get ourselves in boxes, like getting ourselves in the penitentiary or the joint, or, in situations that we always could get out of. We could find a way out of somehow in some way. And he told me, well, you know what, Holmes? He says, I'm in a box now that I can't get out of, And man, it was really hard for me to to accept this, but with Earl's help and, you know, talking to Beto, you know, I have accepted this. You know, he told me something, man, that really made a lot of sense to me. He says, you know what, Jimmy? He says, I get to die with dignity. I get to die with integrity. And I'm not going to die in a penitentiary. And I'm not going to die in active addiction. And he says, I owe this to Narcotics Anonymous.
Right on.
You know. You know, I'm going to say one other thing and then I'm going to close. That Beto has given me probably the most important principle that I live by today. He gave it to me. He didn't charge me a dime for it. And that is, never use another human being for your own personal gain in any kind of negative manner whatsoever. And because I have done that now for a little while, man, my life has got so good I can't believe it. I'm ready to throw myself on the freeway. My life is so good.
All right, all right. Let's take him out. Let's give him a ride. Give him a ride. All right,
With sponsors like him and Earl, man, you know, I can't go wrong. All I got to do is stay in their back pocket. Thanks a lot, and I love you, Beto.
Right. Thanks, Jimmy.
Now let's.
Okay.
You closed it. We're closed. Thanks for everybody that shared with us, and let's do the Circle of Unity.
all right.